start giving. Hey, why don't we go on and get started? I see our council members on this side are sitting out in the audience based on our visuals that we'll have today during our presentation. That's probably a good idea. Mr. Hawkins, don't even bother coming up. Yeah, just sit here. Let me introduce our team from UCA Leadership Studies, Rhonda McCollum, Tim Bullington, correct, and Stephen Connell or O'Connell? O'Connell. They've gone through a long process of kind of developing studying the park issue for us and have come back with really an interesting report. And I'm just going to turn it over to y'all. And you can.
Are you going to need me to use the mic?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. I also have copies of the report, or of the report. You have copies distributed at the council. And then we have copies of the PowerPoint presentation that we're passing around as well. So I don't know where you're sitting, but if you'd like a hard copy, I can get that to you too. Shelley, if you would like one. All right, of course, David. There you go. Before we get started, I just want to extend a big thank you to the mayor's office. This project actually started in 2012, the fall of 2012. I went to the mayor and just very honestly and earnestly asked, what can we do in the PhD program to help serve the city of Conway? And he immediately tossed out a couple of questions, to which I'm very grateful to the students we have in the program. They took up the charge, and we've conducted a couple of research projects with the mayor's office, and I feel like those have been game changers for our students. So up front, thank you very much for your willingness to engage.
Well, and thank y'all, but I also want to give credit where credit's due. Jack Bell.
Yes.
We're hand in glove with y'all, and I appreciate his efforts too. But, y'all carried the
Thank you.
load, but Jack certainly, was
Jack Bell and Wes Craiglow were both at that meeting, at that initial meeting, so we send a thank you to them as well. So tonight, we're going to talk about this project that started in 2012. I applied for a Metro Plan mini grant, which gave us an opportunity to use some funds to put together a student research project. We started collecting data in 2013, and that extended throughout the fall. We did a survey of usage within. We'll talk about the design of the project in a moment, but we did do a survey of those who were using the parks, as well as a GIS mapping survey of existing amenity and physical properties of the parks and recreation. From that, we conducted town hall meetings, and then from the town hall meetings, we also conducted GIS mapping, and we'll be going over those items tonight with you. Ultimately, we produced for the city a Parks and Recreation Master Plan. That was our ultimate goal. So again, thanks. You will tonight in our discussion hear further detail about the design of the project, our data collection sources. Then we also make some strengths and recommendations. There are more in the report. We're going to focus on 3 primary categories this evening. And then, of course, we want to open it up for questions and further discussion. So the overview of the project, I read an interesting article. Don't you hate it when a professor starts a discussion that way? But it was all about the shifting role of the university researcher, and I think this project epitomizes what that article was arguing, which is that we have to be able to take the academic into the field to produce real and meaningful work. This involves finding community partners. As I've mentioned, ours in this project was the city of Conway, and we extend great thanks. Also, we want to send a thank you to the Metro Plan for providing funding, as well as the city for providing a few matching funds for that. Learning in the field, I think, is a remarkable experience. You'll see the participation involved in this project not only included the interdisciplinary PhD in leadership, our faculty and students, but it involved environmental science and its faculty. Jenny Adams, Dr. Adams is not here with us tonight, but she and her students, master students and undergrad students, helped conduct some of the survey data collection. We've also been working with Steve O'Connell and a few of his students in GIS mapping. Dr. O'Connell has been instrumental in putting together the report. That's why he has always been our incredible sidekick throughout the project. We value him greatly, and you'll hear from him. I also want to say that there were, within the PhD program, 5 student research projects that were conducted out of this, and their data is also included throughout the report. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Tim Bullington, who is a student in the program and who was one of the lead researchers on the project.
Thank you, Dr. McClellan. I would also like to say thank you very much to the city for this opportunity to serve the city and hopefully help plan the future for the parks. We examined the park system from three frames. The 3 frames that we looked at was communication. How is the city interacting with the residents? Also, how does the park system communicate with each other? The decision-making processes. And then also, we looked at existing and planned amenities that are already in the park system. To examine each area, we used surveys, and those surveys were online surveys, but we also collected surveys from town hall meetings that I'll talk about in just a second. We also conducted 4 town hall meetings focusing on individual wards to ensure representation across the city. We examined the digital presence, including Facebook and websites, and how they are used to communicate with the residents in Conway. We looked at the decision-making processes in regards to park development. We conducted interviews with the mayor, city staff, city planners, members of the Parks Department. And then we also examined public documents that address the potential for parks planning. That did also include the Conway 2025 plan. Teams of students also went out and conducted physical on-site inventories of various amenities in each of the park. I'd also like to mention that a dozen individual research assignments and papers addressing issues such as government network functions, biological use of parks, parks and health, how parks impacted communities, as well as best practices for parks planning and development were also explored by some of our students. If you notice the highlighted parts on the slide, town hall meeting, interview with the mayor, and mapping the amenities and other data, we will be addressing those a little bit more in detail. As I mentioned, we did conduct 4 meetings, and then again, I would also like to personally thank the mayor, city employees, but most of all the city council members that hosted and participated in the town hall meetings. There's no way we could have done those without your help. And so we looked at really as the town hall meeting as part of understanding how the communication works from the city, also from the residents. We invited citizens to participate in 4 town hall meetings, inviting wards, or divided up by wards. We collected ideas, concerns, suggestions, which ranged from really great ideas to a few just non-plausible ideas. They were well-intended, but just probably would not be able to work in the city of Conway. We collected location data by asking residents to place pins and maps of within their ward, and attached to those pins were ideas, concerns, and suggestions. And we were trying to look for patterns of maybe different areas within the city to look at specific issues. As I mentioned earlier, not only did we collect surveys online, we collected surveys at the town hall meetings. And I do want to make just kind of a little note that about 60% of the surveys represented the age group in Conway between 25, and 40, and most all of them had kids. So this is exactly the target group that we see of people that certainly using the parks. On a personal note, I want to express a thank you to the residents of Conway that showed a significant level of commitment and desire to help make Conway a better community. We did have some special interest groups that came to the town hall meetings and represented their concerns and their felt needs. But after a while, it was really interesting to see the citizens work together and the residents work together, because after they expressed their needs, they were very good at paying attention and listening to other people's needs. And out of those, they generated even new ideas for some of the park systems. So it wasn't like people just came with their own interest in mind. They came to voice, but also to listen. And we think that that speaks very highly of the residents of Conway. We also had the opportunity to have access to several meetings with the mayor, the chief of staff, to look at the decision-making process, specifically some of the planning and development of parks. And I'd like to say, just to mention a couple of the strengths today, what we noticed. First of all, I'd like to mention that the existing park locations. In a lot of cities, typically there are always underserved and underrepresented groups, because parks typically will be developed in higher socioeconomic areas of the city. Actually, Conway has really represented the lower socioeconomic. They are more represented in accessibility to parks, and I think that that's a wonderful part of how Conway has grown and their forward thinking and the importance of accessibility to parks. Also, we've heard many times the importance of green space, and how even in some of the various policies and where areas of the city are built or are growing, that they do take, that does become very important in the planning process, is to preserve green space. Also, we were very pleased to see the amount of involvement with the Chamber of Commerce, that the parks were seen as both economic and city development. So the city showed that we are thinking about parks more than just maintenance. Parks actually have an important role in the city. Certainly the parks represent the beautification of the city and draw new residents and businesses. And so, but we did also, one of the things that we did want to make sure that everybody understands is there is a large amount of emerging special interest groups in Conway, whether that is the people who play disc golf or people who own parks who would like to have, or who own pets that would like to have a place to take their pets to the parks, those kind of things. There seem to be more and more of those groups, and they do become very vocal over time. Much of the decision-making is based on availability of funds and locale, also special interests, and what it seems like is the culmination of these things drives the city to action. And so we'll talk a little bit about that in our recommendation later on, in a couple slides at the end. We'll talk about some recommendations about how we could be a little bit more efficient in engaging residents in the city and taking their interests to heart when planning for future parks. And so I would like to go ahead and turn this over to Dr. O'Connell, who has done a lot of the GIS work.
Thanks, Tim. I guess my sidekick is my uniform, the bow tie. Is that my special trait? I was responsible for this project in the GIS side of things. And one of the things that was really nice about this project is we were able to engage a half dozen or more undergraduate students in both geography and environmental science in the process of the initial GIS assessment. And that involved a collection of data. Rhonda already mentioned going out and collecting information about the individual parks. What we did is we went out with GPS units, collected the individual locations of access points to parks. From an accessibility standpoint, we want to focus on walkability, access to parks by pedestrians. So we want to look at places where people can access the parks, sidewalks, open areas, but then we also wanted to look at what kind of amenities were present in the existing parks, down to where trash cans were. We had students go out from an environmental science standpoint. They were interested in those features. But we had students over the course of most of a summer and part of a semester go out and collect all of that spatial data. And they wanted to catalog all of those different aspects of the parks. One of the things to note about the parks in Conway and the parks anywhere across the country is that parks are generally classified based on their use and the amenities that are present within those parks. And we have to remember that in the status of accessibility and walkability for any park. The National Recreation and Park Association has some general guidelines and general standards for what type of park is classified. And the three broad classifications are neighborhood parks, community parks, or regional parks. And neighborhood parks are, by their nature, parks that people should be able to walk to. They have a little bit of open area, they have playgrounds for kids. Community parks are those that are a little bit broader of a base. You may not be able to walk to them, maybe you'll have to drive, but they have community-wide resources, ball fields, special facilities. And then regional parks are places where people from a much broader area can travel to. In the context of Conway, I think if you use the parks at all, you could probably identify what parks fit into that classification. Things like Lake Beaver Fork would be a regional park. Don Owen, the McGee Center, the ball fields would be community-wide parks. They're generally not considered parks that people are going to walk to. They're going to go for special events. It's the other parks, Laurel Park, Gatlin Park, Tucker Creek, which is more of a linear park, but still accessible from neighborhoods. Those are considered the walkable parks, the neighborhood parks. And from the standpoint of measuring access, we were trying to figure out who has access to parks from a walkability standpoint. And generally what we look for are people who are within 10 minutes. It's about a half a mile from a walking standpoint. You want to be about a half a mile from these resources. And we want to look at who is within that zone and who is outside of that zone. And does it reflect the population of the city as a whole? Are there groups that are over or underrepresented? And as Tim kind of referenced, we did find that we have, at least in Conway for a number of the parks, we have a pretty good balance of who has access to parks. The one thing I do want to mention from a standpoint of the methodology is that we did only focus on pedestrian access. We wanted to measure this based on who could walk to the parks. From that standpoint, we collected data that was based on the access points, so not just the driveways or the parking lots, but where people could access the park from a sidewalk, from a trail. And we also measured it based on the GIS location of residences within Conway. So we got that from through the city GIS, and we mapped from each resident along the roadways to the individual park access points. That does make the assumption that walkability is possible along any roadway in Conway. That's somewhat of an assumption in some places. Sidewalks are present in a lot of places, but not everywhere. So there are some assumptions that are worked in here. But from the standpoint of all of the walking time in Conway, if we take a look at the map, this shows us the walkability of Conway parks. Each individual dot represents a residence in the city of Conway. The areas in the darkest green are less than 5 minutes from the closest park. And in the lighter green, in that core part of the city, the 5 to 10, and anything that's yellow, orange, or red are beyond that 10-minute limit that would be considered walkable. On a whole, if we consider all of the parks within Conway, just over 23% of Conway city residents are within that 10-minute walkable zone for any park within the city. And you can see that cluster is right in the center of town, roughly from Pine Street Park, along Tucker Creek, connecting Laurel and Gatlin Park, and westward out to the McGee Center. That does leave a fairly large percentage of the city, both area-wise and population-wise, outside of that 10-minute zone. And that's especially true as you get towards the outside of the city, where we have walkable times that are well in excess of 30 minutes, which is 1.5 miles from the closest park. So when we look at this from the standpoint of the overall walkability, one of the things to note on this has got a lot of numbers on it. Oh, if you have the handout, this table is actually on the last page. It's a full page, so you can actually see the numbers a little bit better. At the very bottom, you actually see the 2010 census data for Conway. 58,908 residents in Conway. And you can see the breakdown. I just left on this the white, black, and then the other population in terms of total number and the percent of the city. What you can see at the top is that, as I said, about 23% of the city is within 1/2 mile of any park in the city. You can actually see, however, that it is somewhat overrepresented by the African American population. 18.5% are in that, whereas for the city it's 15.5%. That's one of those indicators that we saw. That's what Tim suggested, that the minority populations may have a little bit better access. And one of the things that we look at from the standpoint of equality and resource equity, this kind of status is encouraged. When you look at the 8 largest counties in Arkansas that reported data on access to vehicles by residents, it showed that 6.8% of households in those counties did not have access to a car. But if we were to separate that data by race, 4.6% of white households did not have access to a car, while 16.5% of African American households did not have access to a car. Now in Faulkner County, this data is collected on the county level, not by city, but in Faulkner County, those numbers are much, much lower. It's 2% for white and 2.7% for black, but there is still a disparity between the two groups. So it is helpful to see that indication. One thing to note is that when you separate just the neighborhood parks, those parks that we want to be within a 10-minute walk, only 10% of Conway residents are within a 10-minute walk of those parks. If we add in Tucker Creek, we end up with about 16.8% of city residents in those areas. When we break down the different amenities that are possible, we looked at individual amenities like tennis courts, basketball courts, pavilions and grills for picnics. You can see some of the numbers vary, but it's generally below 15% for any of those access in terms of the percentage of people who have access to parks within a walkable distance. One of the purposes of doing this study was not just to measure the access to parks, but what could be done if we were to add new locations. And again, because we're focused on accessibility from walking, we wanted to focus more on those neighborhood parks, those smaller acre parks that weren't so large, weren't community resources, but had duplicate resources like swing sets and maybe an open field for playing pickup games of soccer or baseball. when we look at the overall city pattern, we can see that we have a pretty good spread of connectivity of accessibility in the center part of the city. But if we limit this to only the neighborhood parks, you can see the amount of red on the map actually increases substantially. So here are all city parks, and here are only the neighborhood parks and Tucker Creek Trail. One of the things that we wanted to look at from GIS is to suggest potential locations. And we picked based on a couple of factors, based on locations where there may be available land or where there was a high density of population that maybe did not have that walkable access. In that context, when we looked at this in GIS, we picked 3 sites. And I will put a big asterisk on this. This was just based strictly on looking at the GIS data, not about whether land was available for purchase or whether the city was looking into these properties. But we came up with 3 spots, one at the corner of Tyler and Hogan, one at the corner of Gardenia and Grummer Lane, south of Dave Ward, and one on the property behind the Faulkner County Library. Each of those locations were in places where there's high density residential area, and they're in places where the people in those places do not have 10-minute walk ability to parks. By adding those 3 locations, you can see the change in walkability to the city in terms of the overall map. What that does is actually increase the walkability from the original amount, 23% for the entire parks. But if we remember for just the neighborhood parks, that value ends up being 10.8%, 10.1%. When we add these 3 locations, that value actually increases to 26% of all Conway residents. That's a 45% increase from the current amount, and that's just 3 neighborhood parks that would make that much of a difference. So that's just an indication of some of the potential for looking at accessibility and walkability using GIS in a study like this. That's one of the recommendations, or one of the potential recommendations that we have. I'm going to let Tim finish up with some more broad recommendations about the park planning process.
After this slide, we want to go ahead and open up for questions and answers, and we see if we can help maybe clarify if there's anything that we need to go over again or anything that you feel like that we can address. So again, some of the positives that we really, we're really impressed with. The parks are proportionally close to those who may not have access to transportation and accessibility to socioeconomic groups that typically don't have access to parks. Most cities, again, have this problem. Conway is kind of in a good place for that. So there's good representation for accessibility, but we would like to increase the walkability for the general population in the city of Conway. We'd also like to encourage the improvement that we have already seen, but we would like to continue to improve the park's website, possibly explore some various ways. The park website right now is very one-way in communication. It does a great job of posting schedules, events, cancellations, but possibly opening up the website to make it a two-way communication where maybe special interest groups or other people can express their concerns or notify park staff if there are any problems within the parks, give feedback, but this would also give park staff opportunity to give feedback to the residents and helping them understand why some things are happening or not happening. Along with that, we would like to see the city engage some of these key interest groups and maybe invite them to participate in parks development, even the maintenance of the parks and protection. We did hear about a group that existed in the past, which is Friends of the Park, and is possibly at this point the city may want to encourage the development of that group again, or maybe to rekindle that group and hopefully allow the citizens to take a little bit more ownership in some of the parks instead of just relying on the Parks Department to take care and maintain the parks. You can invite the citizens to be a part of that too. Decision making will also, we want to encourage the city and the city council to plan further in the future with more discussion and representation of the residents. Much of the decision making that has been made in the past has been based on availability of funds, locale, and interest. And again, this drives the action. And again, this has worked well in the past, but we fear that moving forward, this could actually create an imbalance of representation, and it could lead to political problems in the future, especially if we could continually pay attention to the loudest voices. The city also needs to address, and one of the issues that we kind of came across over and over again, and this is going to be, I don't intend to open up a can of worms or anything, but it does need to be addressed in the Parks Department, which is how does the city address public school playgrounds? How does that fit into the park systems? The problem with using public school playgrounds as part of our calculations and those kind of things is we start to get into issues of who is responsible to maintain those grounds, who's responsible for the amenities or general upkeep. There are issues with making those kind of parks or playgrounds available, because obviously they're not always available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They are restricted. And so the city is going to have to discuss about the partnership that they have with the district. What are the city's responsibilities? What are the district responsibilities? What are liability issues and those kind of things? So those are some of the recommendations that are in the actual parks report that we've given you, but we just wanted to hit a couple of those. And so we want to go ahead and open up time for questions, discussions, any issues or concerns that you might have that we can address. So.
Absolutely. Let me start out real quick, just for clarification's sake.
Yes, sir.
When we showed the accessibility, the schools were not listed, correct? It was just city parks?
Yeah, it just considered the city parks. We did not look at individual schools. I think at one point I may have added them in there just for an interest standpoint, but I did not use those in the final.
Which is good. This is a parks, not a school study, so.
Exactly.
That's good. But another thing, this is just an opportunity, because that is, an assessment, an ongoing, possibility of assessing where we stand as we add in parks inventory. Can we contract with your group, I guess Dr. O'Connell, to update periodically where we stand now that we do have, I know there's one park that, when we bought the land from the UCA Foundation and started the bike trail south of Dave Ward Drive, that's been brought online since this study.
I didn't bring that up, but yeah, this data is static. I mean, it is based on data collection that occurred in 2012 and 2013. Some of it was updated when we went out and noticed that maybe a parking lot had changed or something had shifted. We did update, but that Stone Dam Creek part of the trail south of Dave Ward near the UCA campus is not included on this.
But that's something that we'll hopefully deal with on an ongoing basis, and so periodic updates would be of value to us.
I think it would, and that goes not just for the parks, but for the city itself in terms of its growth and population, because this is 2010 census data, and even in 5 years we know that population has gone up, new residential structures have gone up, and that changes the balance of population in terms of where they are in the city. So you may be adding people in parts of the city that are already in a part of the city that don't have access.
That's right.
So that could lower your percentage of accessibility.
So I'm seeing an ongoing relationship possible here.
Yeah, I agree. Get my undergrads
And recently
working.
also focused on the neighborhood parks is that population from the user survey of 25 to 45-year-olds who typically have families. And so neighborhood parks, I think, is an indication of where can their families go for recreation.
Very good. And certainly the location, this is a roadmap for where we need to look at locating future parks, but it's also a consideration that we can, by making connections and accesses where they don't currently exist, we could expand access to existing facilities from things that are just right there, but you can't get there as the crow flies. You've got to go around the horn, and that creates you're outside your 10-minute walk distance there too.
Yeah, and this again, from the accessibility standpoint, using the GIS methodology uses the road network. It is possible to add different parts of that network, which would involve things like sidewalks, but also trails that connect. I know Tucker Creek has a number of access points that cut into it from neighborhoods that are nearby. Other parks might be able to do something like that, which would allow residents, rather than have to walk
Around
5 or 10 minutes around following a road, they could cut over through a property to a neighboring park. So it would certainly shorten those paths for people who are close to a park.
Absolutely. Other questions? Thoughts? Council members? Well, we appreciate, and we'll probably have more questions, and we have your email addresses.
Yes, you do.
Yes.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate working with you. Well, why don't we take a 25-minute break, come back for council meeting at 6:30. If you would like to join us, before every council meeting, we precede that meeting with a word of prayer and a pledge of allegiance. I'm going to ask us Alderwoman Sheila Whitmore to lead us in prayer, and then we'll have our pledge of allegiance.
Our gracious Father, we thank you for the blessings that you've given us. We just ask, Lord, for your wisdom and your guidance, and we ask, Lord, that everything that we say and do will be pleasing in your name. And thank you, Lord, for this city that you've graciously blessed us with. For it's in your name that we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I will go on and call this meeting to order. Mr. Garrett, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Hawkins?
Here.
Mr. Grimes?
Here.
Miss Mel?
Here.
Mr. Ledbetter? Here. Miss Smith?
Here.
Mr. Jones? Here. Miss Whitmore?
You should have received copies of the March 24th, 2015 City Council meeting. Any additions, corrections, or motions to approve? Motion and second. All in, any discussion? All in favor of approving the minutes as written signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That carries 7-0. Before we get going on a pretty substantial agenda tonight, I want to go on and make an announcement. While last week we hadn't received a draft of the purchase sale agreement for our Spirit Homes facilities back from Cavalier Homes. We had gotten it right before our council meeting, but no one had had a chance to review it yet, especially our city attorney. We did get a chance to review it. We have been going back and forth with Cavalier Homes about possible changes and alterations to it to put it on the most favorable terms for the city. We did not receive a final draft of that document today before the meeting. I told them that if we didn't get it today, that we couldn't deal with it tonight. It would be 2 weeks before we could take it up, if we take it up then. So that said, we don't have a document for this council to review, to look at, to vote on final language, and I'm going to ask them to hold all of that in committee and put it back on the agenda for our next city council meeting at our next regular city council meeting 2 weeks from now.
Second.
Motion and second. Discussion. And again, I apologize. We started communicating with the Cavalier Homes folks last week. Our city attorney stayed late, sending further draft changes out yesterday. They knew that tonight was our meeting night, and they simply just didn't get it finished and drafted, so we apologize. We thought we were operating in good faith. They didn't get back to us. So, no other discussion. All in favor of holding that issue and all relevant topics, which is basically E1, E2, E3, E4, and E5 on our agendas, holding that in committee. All in favor of doing that, holding these 5 items in committee and placing it on our next agenda, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That passes 7-0. And again, we're sorry to anybody who came here who wanted to speak for the purchase or against the purchase. We're not trying to kick the can down the road. We really aren't. This is a major decision that we should, take prudently and with deliberate steps, and this is a step we don't necessarily want to have to take when it's, an unnecessary delay in our opinion. That said, let's move on to the regular business. Economic development is the first item on our agenda. Under that topic, we have consideration to accept the nomination of Brad Teague to the Conway Corporation Board of Directors, replacing Bill Atkinson, whose term expires May the 8th. And this would be a term of, it's 7 years, correct? 7 years for that term? And I would submit that to the city council for your approval.
Second.
Motion and second to approve Mr. Brad Teague, who is the athletic director for University of Central Arkansas, to succeed Mr. Bill Atkinson on the Conway Corporation Board of Directors. Discussion? If there's no discussion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
I'm abstaining.
Let that be noted. There's one abstention, so that passes 6-0 to 1 with Ms. Mel abstaining. The next item is an ordinance authorizing the issuance and sale of water revenue refunding bonds. It would be Series 215 for Conway Corporation. I understand Brett Carroll is going to be carrying the water on this issue, so to speak. So I'm going to ask you to step forward and address the council. And
Well, good evening. I'm Brett Carroll, Chief Financial Officer at Conway Corporation. You alluded to the bond issue that we're talking about here, refunding, and what we're doing is this particular agenda item is taking advantage of a lower interest rate on the water funds, much like you would do if you were going to refinance a mortgage on your home. So it'll allow us to save $80,000 to $85,000 a year, $746,000 over the life of the bond. So we'll save the water department some money there. So had a great team working with us on this transaction. Jack Trumper from Stevens is here. We also had Paul Phillips with Cruz, and of course Gordon Wilburn with Kutak Rock, our bond counsel, working with us on this deal. And so with that, Jack, I'll turn it over to you if you want to add a few comments. Okay.
Mayor, members of the council, good evening, good to be with y'all tonight. Had our sale this morning at 9 o'clock, we went from the order period to 9 to 10:30, had a very successful sale. As Mr. Carroll mentioned, savings of a little over $746,000, and we came in with all-inclusive interest rate of 2.357%. So we were very pleased with how the sale went, and very happy to answer any questions. I do want to mention that the bonds carried an A+ rating from Standard & Poor's, which was the current rating on the 2010 bonds, so S&P came in and affirmed that rating. So we're very pleased.
very good. So they've got a higher rating than we do?
Lower rating. You're at a
I mean,
double A-.
excuse me, yes, lower rating. That's how you say it.
By a notch.
That's how you say it. I was inverse there, yeah. Very good. Any questions of Mr. Carroll and Mr. Trumper? So this first ordinance would be ordinance 01541.
41.
And it'd be a
Second.
motion and second to waive the 3 readings and bring it forward for action on tonight's agenda. All in favor of waiving the reading, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That's 7-0. It hits the 2/3 majority necessary to waive the readings. We have the ordinance before us on our agenda tonight. It's an ordinance authorizing the issuance and sale of $10,185,000 of water revenue refunding bonds, Series 2015, by the City of Conway, Arkansas. Should I continue, Gordon? Read the whole title? Thank you.
Make a motion for adoption along with the emergency clause.
Second.
Motion and second for adoption along with the emergency clause. Discussion? If there's no discussion, being an ordinance, Mr. Garrett.
Ms. Mel? Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Ms. Whitmore?
Yes.
Mr. Grimes?
Aye.
Ms. Smith? Mr. Jones? Yes. Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
That passes 7-0. And the emergency clause, Mr. Garrett?
Ms. Mel?
Aye.
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Ms. Whitmore?
Yes.
Mr. Grimes?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
That passes 7-0 as well. The next item is an ordinance authorizing the issuance and sale of wastewater revenue refunding bonds for Conway Corporation, Series 215A. And again, Mr. Carroll, if you need to, you can, so you're not carrying the water anymore, you're carrying the wastewater, okay. Okay, I understand.
Similar situation, you may recall, I guess it was back in 2012, you authorized the issuance of wastewater revenue bonds not to exceed $70 million for the Tupelo Bayou wastewater plant. And this was a loan through the Arkansas Natural Resources Commission. It was a drawdown loan. You didn't get all the bond proceeds on day one, you just took it as you needed. So at this point, this odd number here, $65,004,588 is what has been drawn under that $70 million loan. Mr. Bill Bethay back here was very successful in putting the cruised to them and negotiated them down.
All right.
to a point, on that loan.
Wow, Billy.
So they've come back and agreed to refund, that loan at 0.25% lower than you had originally done. So this is really the same term, same payment terms, and I don't know what the savings are, but that's fairly significant on $65 million.
About $2 million.
About $2 million, okay.
And then kind of just to explain the companion ordinance with it, there's still retainage left on that project that hasn't been paid yet. So, Natural Resources Commission has agreed to loan that under a new loan, that's the next ordinance. And then there's other associated work that needs to be financed also, so this is a not to exceed $10 million. And that's at 2.5%, so that's even a better rate than you got originally. Bill and company here have done a really good job on getting the rates down on these loans. And nothing very exciting about these ordinances except they're long. This is kind of a standard Natural Resources Commission form that has all the terms in it, because you don't have a separate trust indenture.
Very good. And this first ordinance, the city council can act on now. The second ordinance needs to have a public hearing in advance of it.
That's right.
Okay,
Before we,
very good. So this first ordinance would be, it's denoted A3 in your packet, would be ordinance 01542.
Make a motion to waive the 3 readings. Second.
Motion and second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor of waiving the 3 readings and bringing forward for action on tonight's agenda, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. That passes 7-0.
Make a motion for adoption and the emergency clause.
Second.
Motion and second for adoption and the emergency clause. Discussion? If there's no discussion, Mr. Garrett.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Grimes?
Aye.
Ms. Whitmore?
Yes.
Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
Ms. Mel?
Aye.
That passes 7-0. And the emergency clause, Mr. Garrett?
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Grimes?
Aye.
Ms. Whitmore?
Yes.
Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
Ms. Mel?
Aye.
And that passes 7-0. Now, the next item is the one you mentioned, not to exceed 10 million. It again revolves the wastewater revenue improvement bonds, be known as subordinate series 2015B. We need to have a public hearing on this, so at this time, I will declare a public hearing is open and ask anybody who would like to speak for or against this ordinance and the issuance and sale of these bonds not to exceed $10 million to step forward to the microphone right now. Anybody who would like to speak at anything tonight, please identify yourself for the record and where you live.
Again, Brett Carroll, Chief Financial Officer at Conway Corporation. And the $10 million will be used for, and Gordon pointed part of that out, the retainage to the contractor that's completing the plant. Also, there's a lift station or pump station on Mayor Lane that will be completed, and then some other miscellaneous improvements and additions at the new treatment plant.
Very good. Any questions of Mr. Carroll? Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Anybody else like to
Well,
speak?
by the way, Richard Dawson with Arkansas Natural Resources is here. He worked with us on this project as well. So anyway, I don't know that he was here specifically for this particular item on the agenda, but he is here, and I want to just acknowledge that.
Very good. Call out to Mr. Dawson in the back. Anybody else like to speak for or against this particular item? If not, I will declare the public hearing is closed and bring the issue back before the City Council. It's ordinance 01543.
Make a motion for adoption and the emergency clause.
Second.
Well, we would still need to waive the readings.
Oh, I make a motion to waive the 3 readings first,
Second.
please.
Motion and second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor of waiving the 3 readings and bringing this forward for action on tonight's agenda, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That passes 7-0. Now, Ms. Smith.
Make a motion for adoption and the emergency clause.
Motion and second for adoption. Mr. Hawkins seconded.
I did.
And the emergency clause? Discussion? If there is no discussion, Mr. Garrett.
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Mr. Grimes?
Aye.
Mr. Jones? Ms. Whitmore?
Yes.
Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
Ms. Mel? Ms. Smith?
Yes.
That passes 7-0. And the emergency clause, Mr. Garrett?
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Mr. Grimes?
Aye.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Whitmore?
Yes.
Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
Ms. Mel? Ms. Smith?
Yes.
And that passes 7-0 as well. Sounds like kudos to Conway Corporation and the team on the refinance. We appreciate the work you do for our city. Thank you very much, and carry on.
Yeah.
Next up tonight for the city council is community development, and we typically turn these over to Mr. Hawkins. I'll do that to you, give it to you at this time, sir.
All right, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. And first item on this portion of the agenda is a resolution to set a public hearing to discuss the closing of a portion of an alley running north and south of Pine Street, east of Sutton Street, west of Hamilton Street, between lots 1, 2, 3, and 10, and 11 and 12, in Block 14 of the Burns addition. And we have a resolution for this, and it's Resolution R15
20.
20.
I'll take a motion for that resolution setting a public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? If there's no discussion, being only a resolution, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That carries 7-0. Mr. Hawkins?
The next item, Mr. Mayor, is an ordinance to grant temporary franchise to Sam McFadden, owner of 921 Front Street, to utilize the west end of the city's service alley from Front Street to Chestnut, and we have an ordinance to read for this item. It's ordinance 01544.
You want to hear about it?
I would, yes, I would.
I'm very pleased to ask you to support this ordinance. This is, as you know, this is the old dryer shoe store, our leaning building that we've been looking at for several years. It has sold to Mr. Sam McFadden and McFadden Global Incorporated. They are going to refurbish the building. They bought both buildings, a Pentecostal building next door. And the plan is to deconstruct the north wall and then rebuild it with a better foundation, a little straighter. And that will require some support of the wall. And this 80 feet that we're talking about gets it from Front Street about to the back door of the furniture store next door across the thing.
Bates.
Bates Furniture, thank you. So the main, Bates and our sanitation department are the two main entities that will be affected by this, and we've worked with our sanitation department, and Kim Williams is working with the Bates to work through this a few months that it'll take to redo this, and so I would support passage of this ordinance.
This is a temporary franchise that would allow them to occupy public space exclusively while they do this,
Exactly.
could be,
Through the end of July.
exacting procedure.
Exactly.
I make a motion to waive the 3 readings.
Second.
Motion and second to waive the 3 readings and bring this forward for action on tonight's agenda. All in favor of waiving the 3 readings, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That passes 7-0.
Make a motion for adoption.
Second.
Motion and second for adoption. Discussion?
Hey, Jack, one quick thing. This is not going to, that's okay, you don't need to come up. They're not going to close that alley while they're doing this, are they?
Oh, yeah.
It will be closed.
They'll take the whole alley.
Okay, okay. But then it will reopen
That's not-
upon completion for the construction.
I think the end of July is what we've got it now for.
Okay. I just wanted to check that.
Temporarily be filled up.
Thank you
And
very
which
much.
which is really operationally the way it should be. If we're going to do
Sure.
anything that's structurally, questionable as to that building, and someone is actually looking at addressing it for the first time in years, they need to have free operating, ability in that alleyway and closed to the public during this process. So that's why it's closed, but it's also temporary, as you.
Just wanted to make sure it was going to open back up.
Any other discussion? No other discussion, being an ordinance. Mr. Garrett.
Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
Ms. Whitmore?
Yes.
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Ms. Mel?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Grimes?
Aye.
That passes 7-0. Mr. Hawkins?
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is an ordinance accepting the annexation of lands comprised of 10 acres located at the northwest corner of East German Lane and Bill Lucy Drive, and we have a little construction that's getting ready to go on there. We have an ordinance to read for this item. It's ordinance O-1545.
Make a motion, we waive the 3 readings.
Motion and second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor of waiving the readings, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That passes 7-0. We have the ordinance before us.
Make a motion for adoption.
Second?
Motion and second for adoption. Any discussion? And obviously with annexations, you have a resolution expressing our intent to annex, and then when it was released by the county, you have an ordinance accepting that annexation. This is the ordinance accepting the annexation. Any other discussion? Mr. Garrett?
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Mr. Grimes?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Whitmore?
Yes.
Ms. Mel?
Aye.
That passes 7-0. Mr. Hawkins?
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is consideration to approve the settlement proposal with Gold Creek Baptist Church in regards to the Conway Western Loop project. I'm going to give this right back to you.
Me?
Somebody.
And I'm going to hot potato it right over here to the city attorney.
That's good.
This is a lawsuit that was filed in 2013. Part of the Western Loop project condemned some of their property. There was also some kind of a cut through there that cut right through the parking lot. So the condemnation, it was basically condemnation action and a taking. We've been in conversations over the course after I kind of took over in September with their attorney, Mr. Brandon Moffitt. He and I had several discussions via email, phone, and actually he came to the office a few times. And based on just working with our engineering department, this is kind of what we've come up with, and we think that this is a fair disposition. We adjusted the plans to take out that cut through that took up quite a bit of their property. Also provided them a little additional access after the Western Loop goes through, as far as curb cuts, things like that. There was also a piece of property that we purchased that I believe is to the south, that triangular piece of property. I think it's listed as tract 43 in the settlement proposal. That would be conveyed to them, and then evening up some, I guess, some other easement areas, basically to make the land a little bit more usable for them. They owned some property across from where the roadway is going to go through that was basically made usable because of some dirt work that we purchased from them, or fill dirt that we purchased from them. And then they also owned another home across the way that's going to be, they're going to have the ability to access. So as listed in here, there were 9 issues that we kind of resolved, I think, in one way or the other, and I think it's a fair disposition. We can close the litigation without having to go to trial. So if anybody has any questions.
Any thoughts there? And I'll take a motion to approve this settlement proposal.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second to approve this settlement proposal. And I will point out, reiterate again, as the city attorney said, this is something that, of necessity, by timing, we had to move towards condemnation. But we are still negotiating, we still negotiated after that start of the process to come to a settlement that is agreeable to all without taking it to court. That's what this is. That's what, we're going to be asking you to do later on in this meeting. But, this is a successful fruition, it looks like, on a settlement, and I certainly appreciate the efforts of the city attorney's office, and the city attorney to produce this. We have a motion and second to accept this settlement proposal with Gold Creek Baptist Church. Discussion? If there's no discussion, all in favor of accepting this settlement proposal signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That passes 7-0. If you haven't been down in that area, you can see that City of Conway project is coming along very nicely. I'd encourage you to go down there and look at that. Mr. Hawkins, back to you.
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is consideration to rebuild the box culvert along the drainage ditch immediately east of Van Ronkel Street in downtown Conway. Mr. Vinson, would you like to come up and share some knowledge with us?
Sure thing.
Thank you.
This is the box culvert that sits, like it says, immediately west of Van Ronkel. This drainage does go under Van Ronkel. The box culvert, for now at least, is okay under Van Ronkel, but between the edge of the street and the neighboring building, it's not okay. As a matter of fact, the building's vacant right now. What brought this to a head was some months ago, the owner of that building had a prospective tenant, and he hired an engineer to make some modifications to the building and both in and outside of the building, and they discovered that the box culvert was about to fail. In fact, it is in the process of failing. The side walls are collapsing on one side. And we got an estimate. The estimate you see before you is from Salter Construction. In order to safely get that box culvert fixed before the new tenant was going to take residents in the building, we felt like it might be necessary to waive bids and hurry up and get it done. Now, they've since lost that tenant, and Mr. Mayor, if I'm incorrect on any of this, feel free to.
No, actually, you're doing well. So.
Okay. The tenant that they had lined up has pulled out, but the owner and the city still recognize that the box culvert is dangerous and needs to be fixed. I handed out copies of the street project list as was adopted earlier this year. There's $30,000 in surplus right now, which should be just enough for our street crew to rebuild this box culvert. That surplus comes from 20,000 of it.
Yeah,
I'm sorry?
I didn't know we weren't going to be able to spend it.
Well, I was going to talk to you about that. We're going to talk to you about that. $20,000 of that was for your ward, and you had asked me to look to see if we could put curb and gutter on WestCon. And I think, and we put pen to paper to that, and it would just about double the price of that project. It would take somewhere around 80,000.
Okay, well, we may use it for whatever we can overlay in another area then, because we didn't hear back from you, so.
Okay, that's fine. Another option is Smith Street was discussed. It was brought up the night that we voted, and I didn't have an estimate for that at that time. I think, did I write $50,000 down for Smith Street? Okay. That one is going to be a little bit of a bear because, as you know, the pavement goes right up to the edge of an existing building. And our fear is that when we start compaction efforts we're going to have to tear up the existing road because we're pretty sure it's concrete street underneath. And we tear up the existing road and we start compacting the new subgrade, we're a little bit afraid that the building wall might fall. So we would have to build that in a non-traditional way. Which would make it a little bit more expensive. But if we didn't build Smith Street, that would also free up some money in order for us to do this project. And our options are threefold. Obviously, one option is to ignore it. I don't recommend that, but it's an option. Another option is to bid it out, and I think that the $70,000 that Salter has quoted is probably a pretty good estimate of what the bids would come back at. We would need the money from both Smith Street and the surplus in order to bid it out, or our street crew can build it. And it would be up to the city council where we get that. $30,000 is my estimate of what our street crew could build it for. And we could probably get right on that as soon as they're done building either Washington Avenue or WestCon Lane, whichever one of the two crews finishes first would go here.
But other projects that's lined up for them to do would have to kick on down further.
That's
And
right.
We're already got a year delay on city-built projects.
That's correct.
So, I mean, we're problematic either way. We go on our options here.
That's correct.
Finley, did you say how long you think it would take our city forces to complete this project?
I think it'd take a few weeks. It'd be in two stages. They'd have to excavate and remove the existing box culvert, and then form the new one and pour it, and they'd probably come off of it for a week or two while it's curing, and then come back and remove the forms. So all total, it would probably be more than that. It would be, actually end up being,
Close to a month, probably. Will.
yeah.
And why didn't we bid it out?
Why didn't we? Well, it hasn't been approved as a project yet.
And what was driving this originally, if I can go on a step.
Yeah,
in
go
here,
ahead.
Is all of this project was going on, and the Salter people were there. They're the ones that outfitted what's now White Goat, that this drainage culvert runs directly under, okay? The owners of that building were the ones contracting Salter, and they're also the ones that bought the old Earl Rogers facility. Okay, so they were gonna do all of that. We discovered in the process, they pointed out to us, that the box culvert that's capped, the walls have been displaced. They've been cracked on either side and have been displaced in places. Over 50% the width of the wall have been slid over. When you have a 6-inch at least, maybe even bigger, concrete slab on top of that, that's just waiting for the right bump to collapse it. And that's the ditch that flows under Van Ronkel, flows under Quattlebaum Antiques, flows under White Goat, under Oak Street, under Park Hill Home, and causes so much flooding. So if that ditch collapses, we've got some major new investment in an area that causes great problems for us. So we agree that we have a pretty big need to get in there in a timely fashion and fix this. Okay? On top of that, there's an issue, is the owner is looking to take down the electrical wires in that area, which is good for the future development. But to do that, Conway Corporation has to place a transformer on the ground, and what is now the driveway alongside this box culvert that leads back into the backside of these businesses that front on Oak Street, the transformer's going to have to sit right in the middle of that driveway. So not only is the box culvert threatening to collapse, the driveway is going to have to be blocked to get this public benefit of burying the service lines and power lines. So we thought it'd be timely for us to go on and do it. They stepped out and gave us a price initially because they were there. We thought that would be the best thing, and it wouldn't impact our crews, which are a year behind in scheduled work anyway. So that's what that's there for. We can either accept this, which is ballpark for what we were calculating, or we can go out and bid the project ourselves to find the money. One thing we would have to do is, we did require them, if they were going to do it, to get it engineered, because it's a box culvert, a structurally engineered piece of infrastructure. So we would need to pay that engineering fee of $3,595. Okay, that's a straightforward engineering fee. Our guys, didn't have to do that. They went out and did that, but we could pay that and then go out and bid the rest of it. So we could do that. We're just looking for direction for the council.
Only thing, Salter's already disclosed their bid.
In essence, I feel the same way.
Finley, when you say that Smith Street will have to be redone in non-traditional ways, will that increase the cost from 50,000 to a higher amount, most likely?
No, I think 50,000 is higher than it would have been,
Okay.
because it's a pretty short stretch of road to
Yeah,
cost that
probably.
much.
Yeah. Well, I guess the easiest thing is just to delay Smith Street, although I don't want us to forget about Smith Street, but that's, maybe there's worse stretch of road around, but,
Well, and then maybe as we see what's happening with Markham Street development,
Yeah.
it could be incorporated as
Yeah.
part of that too.
And actually, I think that's a good idea, because this Smith Street project is only from Front to Spencer.
And then you've got Spencer back.
Then Spencer to Markham is not part of this project, and really it needs to be Front to
That's gonna be
Markham.
a real good
Right.
asset.
Right. So
Right.
next year, I could put the whole stretch.
Right.
Yeah.
I could leave the cost estimates separate for your benefit, but
Yeah.
we could put both of them on, for consideration as next year's projects.
So this has an oddball origin, but you can climb in the ditch yourself and look at it we need to fix this before it causes, major problems in this rainy season or in the next rainy season this next fall.
So you never defined anything for us to use the rest of our money? No.
The Smith Street was,
Smith Street is not our money. It's not our ward.
okay. I misunderstood then.
I think Smith Street's one we kind of agreed as a whole just to throw in there.
When we were talking about, when we were talking about what to do, I remember we talked about Mill Pond, and we talked about Smith Street as a whole. And I was a little bit unclear as to what you wanted to, how you wanted to move forward on that. But now's your opportunity if you want to.
I mentioned Mill
Yeah,
Pond.
we want to spend it in our ward if possible. We only got one street we're doing now anyway.
Well, and that's fine. We can spend it on Mill Pond, overlay Mill Pond, if that's what we'll do whatever you guys want to do.
That's the first I heard about using our money for Smith Street.
Well, that's two.
I had to go back and look at the minutes from that meeting after the meeting in order to be fully clear on how that money was decided to be spent. And the minutes weren't completely clear to me. And my intention actually was to come forward at some point before we got to the point where we're going to need to spend that money with you guys and make sure and clarify that point. But this is a fine time to do it.
Okay. We want it on Mill Pond. Yeah, that's what we want.
Okay.
And we'll get back with you on us if you'll respond back to me on my email.
Okay.
But we still need to do
Meanwhile,
something about this
back at the
box
ranch.
culvert.
Well, he brought this up, so.
Yeah, I just kind of, more
Just when
we
it
kind of like the
collapses,
stepchildren
we're gonna
anyway.
have to
I'm just
fix it.
wondering what the heck's going on.
Well, if it collapses, we have two options. We can, at the very least, we would have to rebuild it as an open ditch.
Would it block traffic?
Well, it would block ingress and egress into that building.
I will say this much, and some of you, I think David's too young to remember this. This is the same box culvert that fell in with a box truck in it back in the early 80s.
80s.
70s. And it wasn't necessarily well repaired then, but this is the same one.
And just to clarify for this side of the room, I realized that there was still some things that need to be tied up with respect to how the money was going to be spent, and that's why I handed out that spreadsheet, because my intent was for this to be our opportunity to discuss how to do that, and I wanted to discuss, but I saw this as an additional need, so I wanted to bring that up at this time. We also can take this out of street fund, the street fund, what am I trying to say, surplus? Reserve, thank you,
Surplus.
street fund
Surplus is
reserve,
actually-
which,
Surplus is actually better.
okay.
Are y'all okay with not bidding this out? Anybody else? Y'all feel okay with it? It's
Either
$70,000.
that or have our crews do it.
I was gonna say, have our people do it.
What I would think.
I know we're behind time, but
It's two separate decisions with respect to who builds it and where the money comes
Well,
from.
not telling how long it's been like this and, already. I know at any time it could give way, but
Right.
What was probably the cause was growth of trees that gradually and incrementally pushed, eventually broke the concrete and pushed it out. There was not the vertical rebar in the sides there needed to be. And when it finally did split, the growth of the trees started pushing the sides off each other, and it's going to come down at some point. It's got too much weight on top of it with the cap of the box.
I got one quick question. You have
Yes.
any idea when they gonna start on Prairie there? Is that the last man coming or what?
No, that'll probably be the first or second project of the 2015 list, but we've got Washington and Westcon that are in line before that, and then potentially this, depending on the decision that the city council makes. And then I would anticipate that Prairie would come next. So we're looking at middle to end of summer.
That's good.
Okay. Let's stick with this until we wallow it around completely. Whatever you want to do.
I'd say let's do this with our people.
is that a
That would be
motion?
my,
Yeah.
huh?
Is that
That's a motion, yeah.
Second.
And that would include paying the engineering fees as appropriate? Okay.
Is that okay, Finley?
That's fine with me.
It's workable?
I think so.
Workable with our folks? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, motion and second to perform this rebuild of this box culvert between Van Ronkel and the rear of these buildings on Oak Street, with our crews paying the engineering fees for the culvert design to, I can't remember Jim Bond's company, but his company, $3,595. Discussion. No discussion? All in favor of removing and replacing this box culvert, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? That carries 7-0.
Next item is, Mr. Mayor, is approving the bid, but we've just taken care of that, I think.
No, that's different.
Is this a different?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm
Different
sorry,
box
this is
culvert.
Sixth Street. I'm sorry, my fault. Finley, go ahead.
This is the first of several phases that are going to take place over the next few months, several bids that are going to take place over the next few months to get the Elsinger Roundabout built, as well as Sixth Street rebuilt and Central Landing. This is all this is in relation to the improvement of access to the Central Landing project. The box culvert was bid separately because it is the critical path. So they have to rebuild the box culvert before they can start construction of the bridge, because they got to move the box culvert out of the way. And they can't start at the same time. So that's why we got this. We wanted to get this one bid first and ahead of schedule in order to meet the timeline for all the rest of the construction. Mobley was the low bidder, and they are a qualified contractor, and I recommend awarding it to them.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second, I will point out to you, this is wonderful news to see that they bid so much a better price than what we had in our spreadsheets for cost, $600,000 almost in terms of savings based on our estimates, which is excellent because we'll need it. Right-of-way cost seems to be running a little high from what we figured, so we appreciate this benefit. I will point out that this box culvert, strange as it is actually bigger than the box culvert that flows into it from underneath the interstate. That's just the new standards based on today versus when the interstate was built originally. It is what it is. But it is the very first project we're doing. We will be getting the money put into our accounts with our trustees tomorrow. I think it's $20,120,000 from the recent bond sales based on the vote that happened back in September. So those new road projects that's, around the interstate that's going to transform traffic patterns in, eastern and central Conway is starting with this project. So, and this is a good price to start on. We have a motion and second. Any discussion? If there's no discussion, all in favor of approving awarding this bid to Mobley Contractors for $1,557,292.06, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That passes 7-0.
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is consideration to approve and acquire street right-of-way and construction easement from Nabholz Properties for the Amity Road Elsinger Roundabout portion of the Sixth Street Overpass project. Mr. Vinson.
This is probably the smallest right-of-way acquisition bill that you'll see for some time. Most of it's just temporary construction easement. The berm that needs to be built on the kind of the northern part of the right-of-way encroaches onto this property, and then they'll get it back eventually. That's what the temporary construction easement is for. And they've agreed to the cost estimate of a total of $9,850. We would like to proceed forward with that agreement.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second to proceed forward with this temporary right-of-way acquisition. Right-of-way and construction easement, I should say. Discussion? If there's no discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. That passes 7-0. Mr. Hawkins?
And finally, Mr. Mayor, the resolution authorizing the city attorney's office to seek condemnation of certain properties related to the 6th Street over I-40 and Amity Road and Elsinger Boulevard roundabout project. And Finley, you want this, or does Chuck want this one?
I'll start. I'll
Okay.
let Mr. Clausen correct me when I make
Okay.
a mistake. This is for the box culvert as well, actually. The box culvert, since it's got to be rebuilt, it can't be built in the same place, so it's being scooted. And where it's being scooted onto is onto Miss Lynn's property. And we've sent her an an appraisal, but we need to condemn it in order to be able to meet our construction deadline. This doesn't mean that negotiations are going to stop, and I have no reason to believe that it's going to get messy. We're meeting with Miss Lynn tomorrow, actually, but we just can't wait any longer if we're going to hit our deadline of the agreements that we've made with the developers.
And we hope this will be just like the Gold Creek Baptist Church agreement that we continue to work through, even though we had to go to condemnation.
I hope it'll be significantly less difficult than that one.
Any other thoughts, sir?
No, sir. We'll file the paperwork and get the right of entry.
This is Resolution R-1521. And I'll move for adoption of the resolution.
Second.
Motion and second to adopt this resolution. Discussion? If there's no discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. That passes 7-0.
That's it from this end, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hawkins. Next up, under Public Service, we have 2 items from sanitation and a resolution regarding Airmark concession services with Parks and Recreation. First, from sanitation is consideration to approve a bid for a 2015 commercial rear-load refuse truck. That's compressed natural gas for the sanitation department. And we had some bids in our, I guess this is the first time you've appeared publicly in this role.
It is.
As interim sanitation director.
Very glad to be here. We do have a couple of trucks we're requesting tonight. We are requesting that we purchase a truck that is not the low bid. So I brought somebody that actually knows what he's talking about, Danny Alford, and he's going to explain why we're recommending other than the low bid.
All right, good evening. Yeah, we were excited to have some new vendors put some bids in. So that was exciting. We get options. We like having options because in the refuse industry, it's very limited. So, but the bad part is one of my requirements is a service center within a 60-mile radius. And I do that because we've gotten into trouble before purchasing trucks out of state. And when that truck needs parts or needs to be fixed, it can be quite a nightmare. And we don't have the luxury of taking that off the road for months at a time. So in the first case of the rear load, we had 3 bids. We did go with the Truck Centers of Arkansas, who partnered with Hernard Utilities, which is a new vendor for refuse trucks, but they are in Searcy. We've done business with them for quite a while with our chippers and our chipper truck. So I felt very comfortable with that one. So that's the one we chose at $168,063 for the rear load.
And the first and second bid submitted, there was a slightly lower bid, but that was the same company submitted both of those, correct?
It is, but they partner with different refuse bodies. The first one partnered with was called a leach body, and their service center, they were really trying to get into Arkansas. And it's not that we don't like their product, but they have no service centers yet. They tried to partner with DC Trash for their service center. I really felt that was a conflict of interest, because if my truck does go down, who's going to get priority, DC's truck or mine, you know? And so I really felt that was not going to work for us. And I spoke with the president of that company and just let him know my concerns. And it's an issue that he understood fully, and he's trying to work out different options for us, so hopefully in a later date we can utilize these guys, but just not at this moment until we get that safety net in place.
Very good. So the recommendation is to accept bid number 2, Truck Centers of Arkansas, $168,63.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. Discussion? If there's no discussion, all in favor of awarding this bid, Truck Centers of Arkansas, for the price listed, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That passes 7-0. The next bid is a 2015 automated side load refuse truck, and again, CNG.
That's correct. And it's the same thing happened. These are the same vendors that were bidding on these trucks. And well, this one was a really hard one because you can see there's a significant difference in the one that we chose compared to that low bid. So we really had to do a lot of research. I collaborated with all the managers. They actually brought the trucks in for a demo. We actually used them out on the route for a day so that the drivers could get a feel for them, see how they worked in our city, because there are a lot of things different. Automatic side loader trucks are very complex in comparison to the other trucks. A lot of mechanical, computerized parts. Again, they partnered with Labrie, which is the same company that wanted to use DC Trash as their service center. And as much as I wanted to go with that lower price, I just can't feel comfortable yet in doing that. And their truck was 260 days out. And so I really looked at that in a way that, you know, I've said this before, you know, a trash life is just like dog years. It's those trucks, I mean, see some heavy duty abuse, and it's not that the drivers are bad drivers, it's just that that's the life they live. It's a mechanicals moving nonstop, hundreds and hundreds of times a day. Things are going to wear out, and we've got a truck that we're, you know, putting the baling wire and the Band-Aids on to keep it together until the next trucks come in, and we looked at a cost efficiency of keeping that truck 100% on the road versus for 260 days versus that one that we can get in less than 90 days, and really the benefit outweighed going with the more expensive one. One also that we were very familiar with the truck and that we have, you know, we are readily available to work on it, and the service center is right in Little Rock. So
I make a motion, we go with River City Hydraulics Incorporated.
Second.
Motion and second to award this bid to bid number 3, River City Hydraulics, $270,733. Discussion? There's no discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. That passes 7-0.
thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good job, Mr. Interim Director. The next item is a resolution accepting a renewal submitted by Airmark Educational Services for concession services and approving an agreement between the City of Conway and Airmark. And I'll turn this over to our Parks Director, Mr. Steve Ibbotson. Mr. Ibbotson?
Yes, sir. It's just time for us to renew a lease for their concession services at City of Colleges and Conway Station Park. I had Chuck take a look over this because we had some questions about as far as commissions were concerned, and it states in there that as amended, so our commission rates stay the same as they've been. Just requires a signature approval by y'all and signature of the mayor.
Mr. Ibbotson, I think we all did, probably
Yeah,
received
that's what I was
an
gonna say.
email from someone who talked about the menus and things that were offered. Do we have any control or
We can
recommendation on
suggest,
that?
yeah, and we will,
Okay, good. Yeah, maybe some fruit or, I don't know,
yeah.
something a little more healthy.
I think with
In
an
the
accepting motion on this, we could also say strongly encourage.
Right. I make that motion. And that we strongly encourage some
Healthier
Approve this
choices.
healthier
resolution
food
and
choices.
strongly
I'll
encourage.
second that.
I think that's
a good
that's
idea.
fair, knowing how publicly the childhood obesity issue is raging across this entire country. We can do what we can, and nod to that
Right.
would be appropriate on our part. We have a motion, this is Resolution R-1522.
Make a motion for adoption.
Second.
And actually,
We already had
we have
one.
motions over here in a second already.
We were
Already?
discussing the healthy choices.
And that would be for approval of the agreement, but a strong recommendation to include more healthy foods. But I did read that with interest today. So, discussion. If there's no further discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That passes 7-0. Next up are a series of, under public safety, are a series of discussions concerning the police department, so I'm going to ask the police chief to step forward, camp out at the podium for a while, and help walk us through this. First is consideration to approve the bid for the purchase of 7 CNG conversion kits for the police department. Chief?
Yes, sir. This is for our police vehicles, our fleet vehicles. We can purchase the vehicles under a state contract. However, for the CNG, it has to be bid out. There's no state contract for that. So again, this is for 7 of them, and Crane Automotive is the only one, I believe, that submitted a bid. So we're asking that we accept their bid and for the CNG conversion to continue on with our CNG program.
I'll take a
So
motion for
moved.
that.
Motion that we accept the bid.
Second.
Motion and second that we accept the bid, $88,898.81 for 7 police Tahoe conversion kits. This will bring our total of CNG vehicles at the department to what now? Something like 35?
More than 5. Yeah, it's,
35. It's like we need 20,
I think it's up to around 38 maybe.
38, okay.
Total. I think that's close.
So and obviously with the trucks we just bought and previously have bought for the sanitation department, we are making a substantial effort to move our fleet more and more towards compressed natural gas.
Correct.
So we commend this effort. Any other discussion about this purchase?
Any rebates on those from?
It's possible. It's possible. We have to buy them first and then submit the stuff to get a rebate, is my understanding on it.
State Energy Office?
Through the state, yes.
This one says.
I think that rebate program comes and goes based on funding, does it not?
It does, it does. And I am not sure. I think there is a possibility we can get reimbursements this year, but I'm not for sure.
Yeah.
We'll certainly apply if that option is out there.
And that $1.50 price per gallon still beats gasoline. So, any other discussion? If not, all in favor of awarding this bid, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That passes 7-0. The next item is consideration to approve bids for a firing range target system for the police department. Chief?
Okay, and this may sound familiar. We actually accepted bids back in November, December timeframe. We did not get the project going in time. The bid date ran out. I think it was a 60-day bid time period on it. So we had to rebid the program. If you remember, this was being purchased from general improvement funds that our local legislators got together for us for this improvements at the firing range. We took bids. There was 2 bids open, one for advanced training systems and the other one for Action Target. While Action Target on the bid came in at a few $100s less, actually Advanced is going to be less expensive because as we went through reading the bids, our training officer found out that under Action Target, we were going to have to supply personnel to do a lot of the construction and labor work. So we would have had to pay them, and we don't have extra people, so it would have been overtime to pay them to do it. So actually Advanced into the project's going to come out the less expensive. So we're asking that we accept the bid from Advanced Training Systems.
I moved.
Second.
Motion and second to accept Advanced Training Systems, $45,567, and that's less than $700.
Right.
Different from higher than the low bid, but that would be more than made up for by the extra labor costs associated with installation.
Right.
Okay.
When are they going to start on it? When will they finish with it? And is this year's thing or next year's thing?
Oh, no, this will be this year. In fact, just as soon as we can get them up here, we have to, another part of this is other items I have on the agenda is for concrete work. So there's a little bit of that. So we're going to try to get started on the project as quickly as possible.
Any other discussion? If not, all in favor of accepting this bid signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That passes 7-0. The next item is consideration to approve a bid for a rapid deployment vehicle for the police department. Chief?
This is a response vehicle quite a few years ago, probably 10 or 11, 12 maybe. We had a large bus donated to us, and a lot of work was put into that. It's a very large vehicle. It really doesn't fit the purposes of what we were using it for, but at the time, it was free, and it was better than what we had. This vehicle is for our response team. It's a little bit smaller vehicle, and it is designed for that purpose and not designed as a school bus. So,
I make a motion, we accept the low bid of Superior Ford.
Second.
Motion and second to accept this low bid of $84,867 for a rapid deployment vehicle supportive of the Conway Police Department SWAT team. Discussion?
All this money's in your budget for the year, isn't it?
this is part of the fleet budget, yes,
making
for our
sure.
vehicles.
Just making sure.
That's a part of the pay-as-you-go quarter-cent sales tax.
Right.
Making sure.
Any other discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. That passes 7-0. Next is a consideration to remove fixed assets, tasers and accessories from the city's inventory. Chief?
Right, these are old taser systems. They're no longer in use. We've updated all of those less lethal devices, so these are some that we need to dispose of. We've actually found a company that will purchase those from the city, so we're asking that we can take them off of our inventory and get them sold and out of our storage room.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second to dispose of these assets from the Conway Police Department. Discussion?
Did you say less lethal?
Yeah, the
Tasers?
taser systems, electronic, you know what a taser is? Yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't know any of them were lethal. Are they?
Less lethal. They don't call it non-lethal because somebody could die from it, but it's a less lethal,
Semantics.
instead of using a firearm, to use a taser. All of our officers are now equipped with tasers.
So not as
And
much.
it's a less lethal
just not as
device is
much-
what it's called.
Not as much juice in it, or,
It's less lethal than a gun.
Than a
And
firearm.
a gun.
It's not a tuned down taser. I mean, it's just less lethal than a gun.
okay. I'm having a problem with the terms. And there's a
Any other
secondary
discussion?
market for it, obviously.
Yes.
for
They
more
will,
lethal.
they will repair them and they will sell them. They possibly may even go to other law enforcement agencies in other countries.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, it needs to.
If no other discussion, all in favor of approving this request for disposal of these assets signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That passes 7-0, and you see those listed in part of our packet. The next item is an ordinance appropriating asset forfeitures funds for concrete, electrical work, and duty weapons for the police department. Chief?
Okay. The $5,000 for concrete and electrical work, this is part of that project with the targeting system at the firing range. The GIF funds cover the cost of the equipment and that, but we have some additional construction costs to get the system put into place. So we're asking to utilize forfeiture funds to finish that project.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second, well, actually,
Make a motion that we waive the 3 readings.
Second.
motion and second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor of waiving the three readings signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That passes 7-0. This will be ordinance 0-15-46.
Make a motion for adoption.
Second.
Motion and second for adoption. Discussion? If there's no discussion, Mr. Garrett.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Mel?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Grimes?
Aye.
Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Ms. Whitmore?
Yes.
That passes 7-0. The next item is ordinance waiving competitive bids for the purchase of duty weapons for the police department. Chief?
All right, what we're asking is to purchase weapons from Cruz Uniform and Equipment. They are only Glock distributor. And what we're doing is taking our seized, confiscated weapons that we have in our evidence room. We will trade those into Cruz Uniform along with our current duty weapons, which are approximately 8 years old now. And by doing that, they're buying these weapons from us. We will be able to upgrade all of our firearms for our officers with only an additional cost of $4,500, which was part of that forfeiture that we approved in the last ordinance.
Well, pretty
It's a
wheeling
good,
and dealing.
I'm sorry?
It's pretty good wheeling and dealing then.
It is, and it's a good, comfortable way to dispose of the firearms. They're going to a licensed dealer, somebody that we know is a reputable dealer. And, I mean, they could be sold at a public auction, but we feel this is a good way to dispose of those and also upgrade our equipment without a large cost to the taxpayers.
Absolutely.
Make a motion, we waive the 3 readings.
Second.
Motion and second, we waive the 3 readings and bring it forward for action on tonight's agenda. All in favor of waiving the readings, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That passes 7-0. This would be O-1547.
Make a motion for adoption.
Second.
Motion and second for adoption. This will be waiving the biddings for the purchase of these Glock duty weapons, but under these circumstances, where it's a trading deal. Discussion? Mr. Garrett?
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Mel?
Aye.
Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
Mr. Grimes?
Aye.
Ms. Whitmore?
Yes.
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
That passes 7-0. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
And the next item is an ordinance waiving bids for the purchase of workstations and monitors for the Conway 911 dispatchers. And Mr. Hartzell, our Information Technology Director.
This is sort of a unique request because 2 of the 3 bids are on state contract. And we were able to go to a vendor by the name of Next Step, who we've done business with, and save about $1,200. So rather than go out for bids and get the same bids from Dell and HP on state contract and Next Step, we chose just to ask to waive the bids.
So moved.
Second.
Oh, I'm sorry, we need to move to waive the
Waive the-
readings. Excuse me. Move that we waive the readings.
That's why she does this.
I know.
No.
I appreciate you
Hey,
trying
I'll
to step
second
out in a
yours.
new role there. I thank you for that.
It's like, let's go.
Everybody's got to learn a new trick
I can
sometime.
just take back and just, stay on Easy Street and let you take care of this. Okay, motion and second to waive the readings. All in favor of the waiving the readings, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. The ordinance is in front of us. It'd be ordinance O-15.
48.
Move for adoption, and I don't see an emergency clause.
Second.
Motion and second. Discussion. If there's no discussion, Mr. Garrett.
Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
Ms. Mel? Mr. Grimes?
Aye.
Ms. Whitmore?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
That passes 7-0.
Got one more.
And that's all the items I have on the agenda tonight.
And this
Make a
one.
motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and second to adjourn, and with the one exception of a abstention, I'd have never dreamed we could have gotten through that agenda without a negative vote.
Took half of it out.
Okay, we stand adjourned.